Hello everybody and welcome back. I'm Christo. Thank you so much for joining me. This is EU5 Military and War. Let's dive straight into it. A slightly shorter one today. War, a topic we're all waiting for, of course. So, the way that war works in EU5 seems relatively similar to EU4, but there's a couple of key differences. These are impact, because manpower matters, logistics, because food matters, and army design, because battles are more dynamic than they used to be. So first off, here's just a cool screenshot. Here's the second phase of the 100 Years' War, and look at this thing. That is a lot of involved parties. France got Brittany on side, apparently. But yes, late medieval warfare, most armies don't feel professional armies. This is one of the other big differences. We have levies now. So you have some states start with professional armies, some don't. And for a lot of people early on in Europe, you're going to be working on levies raised from the burghers, peasants, and nobles and commoners. Sorry, they said peasants already. Not clergy, I guess. This is how levies work. And I do have a slight concern about this, or a slight issue. It's not a big deal, but when you raise the levies, the pops disappear from the places where they're being raised from, which makes sense. Because they're not there anymore. They're in the army. But also, you get a raw materials output negative and a food production negative. Why? Removing the people has already applied this effect. And you might say, well, it's to simulate the fact that all these workplaces suddenly have less people working them. But surely that's already modeled, right? I don't really understand why there needs to be this extra modifier on hitting your raw materials output and your food production. Because yeah, if the simulation is working well, the removal of the population should map basically exactly to the impact that person not being there would in fact have. Perhaps it's difficult to model the impact of many people leaving all at once in the way that a levy situation would result in, but there should be ways to model that because the plague is going to do that, right? Anyway, not a big deal. It's good that it has an impact for sure. So the pops actually go, and then when you disband the levy, they come back, of course, which is very important. They're real people, which means if they die, they're gone. And obviously you want to avoid that. So in your army, you can see you have these levies. They have positions, reserve, van, left or right flank. Cool. And the levies have differing qualities. So, the nobles will send armored knights or whatever, which are obviously much better than the just the feudal levy, the random infantry with a little spear making their way through. And yes, of course, you transition towards a standing army using manpower, and you do that with buildings. Those buildings are unlocked at various different times as you progress through the tech tree. And the units then get better and better, and you can have these into falconets, and you have the unlocking of artillery, and they require more and more resources and more materials as you unlock into better and better units. Now, there's much ado could be made about this, but I think that's the high level stuff on units. And then we get to battles. CK2 battles. 2011 to 2020, rest in peace. Close enough. Welcome back. Here they are. We got flanks, baby. And when the flank breaks, you get flanking and you get huge bonuses. Really cool. Much more dramatic and dynamic than the EU4 battle, I would say, because you can really see like, oh, we broke them on the right flank. Yes, we're crushing in. And it feels more impactful and more dramatic, which I really like. Now, there's obviously a ton of stats on this screen, and we're not going to go too into it, but I am looking forward to seeing how impactful the martial score of characters is, especially because now it's just a simple range between, is it 100 or 0, 100? I'm not sure, but rather than having different pips in different categories and things, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how impactful that is. Apart from that, there are battle phases, and I think they go into that a little bit later. Yes, you can be as precise as you want. I really hope there's like an auto balance button that puts, I don't know, two half in the middle, 1/4 on each flank, something like that. We'll see. Here's an occupation. Oh, that's interesting how that's shown. Occupation is just days left. I assume that's a place that doesn't have a fort. Interesting. Yes, logistical reserves sit at the back. Yes, so general. Here we go. Administrative skill boosts siege ability. Interesting. And logistic distance. Diplomatic skill, army morale, initiative and food composition. And military boosts army speed, discipline, and combat speed. So lots of impact actually from all three skills. So a true kind of god unit is going to be super, super impactful. Nice. And you can see here, many of them are just linear. Some of them 5 times smaller. Cool. Cool. All nice and easy to understand where those stats are coming from. And yeah, army movement speed up to 20% faster just based on the martial. Pretty good. Sorry, military ability. I'm pretty sure I'm going to call that martial. So army composition, infantry, army, cannons, and the new thing, auxiliaries, familiar for those of us who've played Imperator. But yeah, and also, yeah, unique levies. So we get longbowmen in England. Cool. And yeah, the size of units changes radically. So this one starts out, this is 1,000 levied one, but when you field regiments, those are the, I don't know if it's technically a regiment, if it's a levy, but regiment starts off at a size of 100, go all the way up to 3,000. Pretty cool, pretty cool. So the scale of these combats and the devastation when you lose troops in battle. I mean, not literal devastation, but devastation in terms of damage to your demographics. Ever more crazy and dramatic as the game goes on, which is cool. And then you have camp followers, which I have to say is an interesting name for this unit, but they provide extra food storage, which is useful. And so, yes, speaking of food, look at this. In order to get food to this army, you have to have an unbroken chain that connects back, and there's a limited distance that this can go from friendly territory. Now, does occupied territory count? I assume it does. But yes, attrition, heavy losses, sometimes forcing a retreat. So you really need to take kind of step by step, and it's forced by this. I assume this can't pass an enemy fort, but perhaps an army can walk straight past an enemy fort, which I would like, because the whole fort defense, fort zone of control thing, always very gamey. You can walk straight past an enemy fort. It's just that now your baggage train is in extreme danger. Disease and winter obviously can also cause big problems, and you can actually spread disease with armies, which could have some interesting nefarious uses, but that's not the usual case, obviously. So battles, you skirmish, you get artillery fire first, and then you have main combat in your 3 flanks. If it retreats, it's replaced by another one. If there isn't another one to replace it, the flank gets smaller and smaller. If all the flank retreats, they smash through and you get big problems. Naval warfare works very similarly, but you've got to remember that fleets control blockades and things will have a huge impact on trade access, which is going to be very impactful for those, Mediterranean trade empires early on. Or if you somehow had Britain getting into trouble trying to get access to its French holdings. If the French holdings aren't able to import things from home, you're going to have big problems. Or if, for example, you're Britain and you want to cause problems from Spain, obviously messing up their trade between them and the Americas is going to completely implode their economy. And yes, this I really feel like I'm going to not want to declare wars, because I really need my my people to stay alive. It'll be interesting to see how impactful that is, how much more averse you are to just perpetually being at war and using all your manpower as much as possible, just viewing your manpower as a resource to be spent, I think is a really, really good change. But that is war and military in Europa Universalis 5. I'll see you next time for, remind me, diplomacy and international relations.